RocSports, I'm back with another video. As you can tell by the title, this is a video on my list of top 5 fighters that need to step it up in 2022. Let's get right into it. So, it's a lot of fighters that could have made this list. Let me say that. Well, first, let me say, I'm a fan of every fighter that's on this list. And part of the reason why they on this list is because I care about their careers. But in certain aspects, sometimes I feel like as if I care about their career more than they do in terms of legacy. So I want to get that out the way. But it's so many fighters that could have made this list. I could have went on with the top 10, top 15, whatever. But we're going to stick with this top 5 fighters that I want to see step it up for 2022. By step it up, it could be competition, activity. It could be all of those things. But I just want to see them step it up. So coming in, we're going to get right into it. It's not going to be a long video. We're going to get right into it. So at number 5, I'm going to have it on the screen too. I got Chris Colbert. For a lot of people that don't know, Chris Colbert is a 16-0 with 6 knockouts. He's 25 years of age. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe he's from Brooklyn. Yeah, he is from Brooklyn. And yeah, so he's 16-0. His biggest win is against King Tug. And I think the world of Chris Colbert in terms of talent. So there's no reason, in my opinion, why when we talking about top prospects in boxing, when you mentioning the Boots Ennis, the Shakur Stevensons, even though they're not even really prospects, but just young fighters, Boots Ennis, Shakur, Devin Haney, it don't matter who you listen, Virgil Ortiz, he should be in this conversation. Chris Colbert, if we talking skills, his personality, like him marketing, like he's the total package when it comes to what you would want in a fighter. So why don't we know why isn't this one of PBC's top headline fighters? I don't know. Because he should be headlining at this point in terms of on the big stage, in my opinion. Very entertaining fighter. Anybody that don't know who Chris Colbert is, you should get into him with him. But at the same time, he's on this list because although he is active, like active for today's fighters is 2 times a year, I guess. 3 times you're great if you're fighting 3 times a year. But it's just time for him to step it up. He's at 130. We should be talking about him against Jamel Herring and Shakur Stevenson and Oscar Valdez and Burchell if he still can make the weight. Tevin Farmer. All of these are great fights for him at 130. So it's I don't want to see no more King Tugs. And there's no disrespect to King Tug, but boxing is about levels, and he's just on another level than that. And so it's time for him to start fighting people that's on his talent level too, or at least close to it. But yeah, it's time for Chris Colbert to step up this year. Not with just activity, but let's get some bigger names on your resume. I'm not calling all of these fighters out on this list specifically for the same reason, meaning like I'm not saying pinpointing that he's the reason why he's not in big fights, but for whatever reason, it's time for you to step it up though. Gary Russell has a big fight tonight. A lot of people have Gary Russell on upset alert. Gary Russell is 31-1 with 18 knockouts. His one loss is coming to Lomachenko. But a lot of people got Gary Russell on upset alert tonight. So this is a big night for him. He's fighting one of the Pacquiao fighters, as everybody know. Power puncher, so he got to be on point. But Gary is on this list for obvious reasons. Gary is by far easily one of the best talented fighters out today too. IQ, he's the total package. He has power for his weight class. He can outbox anybody. Probably the best combinations in boxing. The fastest hands in boxing maybe. But again, I believe that he's coming off a 2-year layoff, if I'm not mistaken. And that's terrible, man, for somebody of his caliber. That's really bad. This is somebody that should be one of the best fighters of this generation, which I still believe he is. But in terms of his legacy, you wouldn't see that. Like his biggest win is against, who can we say, Jojo Diaz? I mean, like that's his biggest win. And it's not a knock on Jojo Diaz. Gary Russell he's been wanting the Leo Santa Cruz's, the Abner Mares for the longest, the Josh Warringtons when he was at 26 for the longest years ago. But for whatever reason, he never got those fights. But I'm one to believe if you can't get certain fights, don't have your career be based on certain fighters, if that makes sense. So I'll talk a little bit more about that with the next fighters that's on this list. But yeah, Gary Russell, I want to see him. He said he want to get 3 fights in this year. Let's see it. Talk is cheap. Let's see it. And like again, in terms of talent, Gary it's only a handful of guys that you can say is better than Gary. We talking just strictly in the ring. But when you talking legacy and all of that, just generation alone, he's not even top 10. You know what I mean? So, but talent-wise, he's easily top 10. So Gary has to step it up this year. He's already up there in age, and it's time for him to get a legacy fight. He could have been Loma, looking at what Loma did this far in his career, but he lost to Loma. The Jojo Diaz is a great win, but that's not a legacy-defining fight. He need a big fight. Let's see you move up to 130 after this and try to get a Shakur fight. That's a great fight. And if he was to beat Shakur or any of those guys at that weight, or 35, but stop with the asinine calling out Terrence Crawford and all of that. Just stop. Fight the dudes that's around your weight. It's fights that'll be made. Again, the clock is ticking on Gary, so we want to see Gary step it up. At number 3, Booboo Andre, number 3. Booboo is 31-0 with 19 knockouts. And again, just like Gary Russell, when we talking talent, Booboo is up there with the best, man. Like, in terms of what can't he do? He has power. Only thing, the knock on Booboo is that sometimes he can't coast to fights. I agree with that. Coast to decisions when he know he has a fight won. Sometimes he can step on the gas tank or the gas pedal a little bit more. But he's on this list because it's time for him to have some big fights, man. Again, he's 33 years old. This is one of the best southpaws out there. But these dudes is basing their career on Canelo and Triple G. And it's other fights to be made out there for you. If Canelo and Triple G don't want to fight, move around then. Go back down to 54. Go up to 68 and fight those dudes. Fight Jamal Charlo. If Charlo say he don't want to fight you, put him in the same category with Triple G and Canelo. Cancel them out until they say your name. If they don't say your name, it is what it is. Go fight Benavidez. Go fight Caleb Plant. You know what I mean? Go fight all of these guys that's around your weight. When hothead Jamal Charlo move up, fight him. You know what I mean? If he, like, it's fights to be made. But one of the biggest fights for me to be made in boxing is Demetrius Andrade and Jamal Charlo. He was supposed to fight Jamal Charlo years back, but he pulled out of the fight the week of, as I was saying. For whatever reason, the Charlos are still hanging that over their head. I'm not blaming them to the extent, but my thing is you could take that out on him by fighting him again. If he was to prove, if they was to sign a fight right now again, meaning Jamal Charlo and Demetrius Andrade, and Demetrius Andrade, for whatever reason, even if it was injury, was to pull out of the fight, then that makes Charlo look good. You know what I mean? From the standpoint of, yes, you might have lost some more money, but Demetrius Andrade is nothing to talk about no more. But Jamal Charlo and Demetrius Andrade is in the same boat. The difference is just that Jamal Charlo has a J-Rock fight under his belt. But come on, that was years ago. And it's time, same thing for those guys to just step it up. He's 33. Let's move on to number 2. At number 2, Javonte Davis. Now, some of y'all watching this may feel like Tank should be lower on the list. You could easily shuffle these guys whichever way you want to shuffle them. Booboo could be number 1. Gary Russell could be number 1. I'm not arguing that, but I just think that these are 5 fighters that need to step it up. But I had Tank number 2 because Tank is in his prime. And if anybody have tons of fights to be made out there, it's him at any weight. If you could argue, other than Canelo, he has the most fights that could be made. Tank been having fights that could have and should have been made from when he was at 130, and there's been talks about him fighting guys like Keith Thurman at 47. So you know what I mean? It's zero excuses for Tank. I'm tired of him keep talking about. I mean, I'm tired of us, and I'm guilty of this too. keep blaming Floyd and Leonard for Tank's mishaps, and rightfully so. But at the same time, Tank had to take control of his own career. He's a grown man. He's 27 years old. He's a grown man, man. Tank is 26-0 with 24 knockouts once again. But his biggest win is who? Is his biggest win the fight that he had for his first world title against Jose Pedraza? Like, no. Is it Mario Barrios? Is it Leo Santa Cruz? No. Tank could fight any of the top guys at 130, but if he can't make that weight, cool. Campaign at 135. Dominate 135, clean out 135. If Tank was to fight Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez, Cambosis, and Loma, that's your legacy right there. It don't even matter what you do after that. That's a whole career's worth of Hall of Fame worthy fights right there. So there's no excuses for Tank. It's time for him to step it up. Whatever weight that he's fighting at. I would wish that he would just pick a weight and stay there, whether it's 35 or 40. But if we talking 140, it's even better fights at 140. But again, it's time for him to step it up, not just in terms of competition, but activity as well. All of these dudes are young and they only fighting once, maybe twice a year. I don't want to hear nothing about the pandemic because this was going on well before the pandemic. So Tank is damn near number one on my list. And I love Tank. Got all the skills and talent in the world, but it's time for him to step it up, man. No more ducking and dodging, whether it's from him or Mayweatherpromotions, whoever it is. It's time for Tank to step it up. And last but not least, somebody who I was a big fan of. And I'm saying was because I'm not that big of a fan of him no more. And that's Jamal Charlo. I'm still a fan, but I'm not as big of a fan. Mostly because of the things that he has to say outside of the ring about certain guys and just his antics. And again, you're somebody else you're in your prime and you just refuse to fight top worthy guys. Jamal Charlo is 31 years of age in his prime, in the peak of his prime. And he's 32-0 with 22 knockouts. But again, I have him ranked higher than Demetrius Andrade because at least Booboo is more active. Yes, he's not really fighting anybody either, but his mandatories for the, whoever they put in front of him. But Jamal Charlo just doesn't fight, man. He don't fight enough to me. I feel like that he's in a point in his career, from what it seems, that he's very content and what he has achieved thus far and what he's done outside the ring. He lives a very great lifestyle, all of that. But we want to see more from Charlo. He's leaving a lot of meat on his bone in terms of his career. Just like I said about Booboo Andrade, if you can't get the Canelo fight or the Triple G fight, for whatever reason it is, for whatever reason you believe, move on. Are you going to retire still saying Canelo didn't want to fight me and let it be that? No. And if you do, then that's just what you do. But in terms of your legacy, you need to fight Demetrius Andrade. You need to fight David Benavidez. Is not no reason why you and Benavidez can't fight. If you wanna have issues and saying Canelo and Triple G don't want to fight you, cool. Because Triple G definitely don't want to fight these guys. But Canelo is just on the bigger and better things, in my opinion. He's past it now. But if you want to say that, cool. Then fight Demetrius Andrade. If you don't want to fight Demetrius Andrade because of what happened in the past, I'm still going to hold that over you, but cool. What's your excuse for David Benavidez? When this dude been disrespecting you in every way, whether it's on interviews, on social media, whatever, he wants to fight you. Why can't you fight David Benavidez? Caleb Plant, been very vocal, calling Jamal Charlo out. Why can't you fight Jamal Charlo? Both of those guys are PBC fighters. There's no excuses. Why can't you fight Jaime Munguia? I don't get Jamal Charlo. Again, he's 32-0 with 22 knockouts, but again, his biggest fight came against J-Rock in what year was that? 2016. Austin Trout, Julian Williams, and Dervin Checo is his biggest wins. And those are not terrible names, but those should be in the bottom of your list in terms of top fighters you fought. We need to get some more fighters in there. The rest of his fights, he should be finishing his career off with Booboo Andre, David Benavidez, and Caleb Plant. If he was to finish his off with just those three and just anybody else in between, I'm okay with that, because he fought the guys that was around his weight, the best guys that was at that point around that time. But he seemed like he's just very content in where he at in his career right now. And because of that, in my opinion, your legacy is taking a hit. Maybe legacy isn't everything to these guys, but us fans, we want to see the best fighting the best. And everybody that I mentioned on this list is not fighting nowhere near the best fighters in or around their weight class. So I'm not going to be long. That's the end of this video. All of these fighters, it's time to step it up this year. If you can't fight 3 times, fight 2 times this year at least, and let it be very quality worthy opponents. But that's it. I'm RocSports. I'm checking out. All of my boxing, NFL, and NBA fans, like, share, and subscribe, man. Keep coming back. I'm going to be dropping more content.